pretty obvious. We celebrate Thanksgiving this week, and I'm guessing that many of us are focused on how much we have to get done before Thanksgiving rolls around. But the Christian calendar has other ideas, because today, in essence, we sit on the eve of Advent. And the scriptures for today are lessons about the presence and the power of God with us. Still, we can give thanks for all God is, for all Jesus is on this eve of our preparing for Jesus' arrival in the manger. And our lessons give us some foundations for our faith. Now, the psalm that we said together, it paints a picture of a God, but not some far-off God, but right with us, right in the center of the psalm, and where we sang, and at the end too, we sang, "The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our refuge." And with those words, we claim that God's presence with us is a source of consolation, it's a source of hope. But if we think of it this way, if we say God is our refuge, then God is the constant in our life. It's clear right there in the psalm that God is the constant amidst a creation which changes and appears to be tumultuous and threatening and volatile. And it's not just any God, it's Yahweh, who bridges the heaven to earth. The Lord of the heavenly hosts is also the King of earthly humanity. So God is not far away, God is with us. But then we turn to the letter to Colossians. Now, it probably sounded a little thick to you because it really is a sort of a theological statement, but it's also a brilliant hymn that reminds us that, as it says in verses 12 through 14, if you want to go back to it, that you share in the inheritance of God's holy people. You are part of the kingdom of light. For the message is that God has rescued us from the dominion of darkness and brought us into the kingdom of the Son that He loves and sent to us. So in Jesus we have redemption, we have forgiveness of sins, we are part of the light. And I think that that is a hopeful message for us as these days get shorter and darken. We can find hope in the light that is coming into the world and has come into the world. And that is something to be thankful for. But I wanted us to think a little bit about who is the light. Well, the light obviously is Jesus. It's a scripture that from John that we say on Christmas Eve, the light is coming into the world. And we know Jesus. We know that Jesus is the one who was God right here on the ground. A flesh and blood man. He walked among us. And the Christ, the King of heaven that Colossians talks about, is the King of heaven, but also this King lived right here on earth. And creation was made through him. He holds all things together. He's the head or the source of the church. And God is reconciled to us, to all creation through him. So the scripture was a little dense about that, but this is a little clearer. We could get bogged down in that theological discussion about how Christ reigns in heaven, but what matters is that he's right here, right now. He came to walk with us, and today he still gives us the power to live here on earth. So what does that power look like exactly? I think the power Jesus gives us is confidence. Confidence, power to walk in the light of Christ. And that means that we are made for more than just ourselves and our own well-being. The season of Thanksgiving reminds us to think of others before ourselves, but the season of Christ is all year long. It reminds us that we are part of a community that includes all of humanity and all of creation. The power of walking in the light of Christ cuts two ways. First, Christ calls us to a greater responsibility for ourselves, for our neighbor, and for our world. And that's a pretty big responsibility to have on our shoulders. But we can break it down if we think about simply how we live our lives. If we consider the impact of what we do, what we say, how our words affect others, how our actions affect others. Words have power, we know that. They can build up or they can tear down. They can give life or they can destroy. And actions, I think, are just more how we treat each other. Actions are about, and they're more than that, they're about how we consume goods, how we spend our time. So do we build up God's kingdom on earth, or do we use it up a little bit at a time? And those are tough questions. That first part of walking in the light of Christ, the responsibility that we are given. But the second part, I think, is a little bit better. The power of walking in the light of Christ is the power of freedom. And what does freedom look like? Perhaps it is when we find ourselves in this darkness of sorrow, we know that we are not alone, that there are others that bear that darkness with us. Maybe our membership in the kingdom aids our ability to handle sadness as it creeps in. But if you say it another way, possibly it's the power to simply have joy in the midst of hardship or trauma or grief. We know we're not alone. We know there is a way through it. So in the season of Thanksgiving, on this eve of the advent of the coming of Christ, we're given time to wrestle with what it means to walk in the light of God. Or asked in a positive way, what are the implications in your life if you allow yourself to be remade in the image of Christ? I'll say that again. What are the implications in your life if you allow yourself to be remade in the image of Christ?